How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. It helps out, means a ton. You guys get plenty of fun stuff. Anyway, getting right into it. We're doing the projection sorcery today because it's one of the newer techniques in the series. It's not been around nearly as long as a lot of the techniques, well, any of the techniques I've talked about already. And it's not the simplest one to kind of explain. At least I don't think it translates extremely well from Gege's mind to the manga panels to our heads. I don't think it's the easiest one to absorb, at least. Now, considering it deals with frames of animation and all this kind of stuff, I think when we get to the anime, they'll be able to illustrate it a lot better, like in motion. I think that's kind of the best way to show this technique, actually, is in motion. So I actually have a little clip real quick to show you guys to kind of give you a physical explanation of it before I just tell you about it. And it's just a clip of me waving my hand across the camera. The first one is going to be just 24 frames of animation. I just went into my video editor and clicked next frame 24 times. So I took the first 24 frames of this video. Next, I took those 24 frames and I made them play out over just 1 second exactly. Well, it was 1 second. It was 1.002 seconds. So it was pretty close. The first clip I'm going to go ahead and show you now is the 24 frames in normal time. This next one is the 24 frames in 1 second. So you can see how that looked kind of unnatural. It was unnaturally fast. Just go ahead and try doing that. It's weird. I can't mimic the exact speed. It's just strange. It feels weird. It's not normal. This is what they're doing. They're just doing it on a much bigger scale than like a hand wave. That's kind of a dumb, childish way to use the projection sorcery, if I'm being honest. They're doing this over a much grander scale. So imagine jumping from where I'm at to on top of a pillar that's like 30 feet away from me and then jumping down to the ground. That's going to seem extremely fast when you trace that into 24 frames and play it out over 1 second. So now that that is all kind of explained, hopefully a little bit more easy to digest for some people, I just want to explain everything real quick about the technique. So, the projection sorcery technique allows Naoya and Naobito to take their field of vision and then trace 24 movements through that field of vision. Those movements will then play out over 1 second. There are a couple caveats. 1, the movements that they trace cannot excessively break the laws of physics. So they can't just move forward as fast as they can and then immediately change direction 180 degrees and move straight backward as fast as they can. Physics doesn't really allow you to do that. Your insides would kind of just be mush from the immediate and 180 degree change in direction. You can't do that. You just freeze. You can, however, and we see this very often, with Naoya especially, do more roundabout movements. So the reason Naoya has to do this is so his movements don't break those laws of physics. You can take an object and curve it much faster without doing serious damage to it than you can changing it 180 degrees instantly. That is just why they have to use specific movements. 2, the second caveat. Once they trace these movements and start the technique, they cannot change these movements. That second has to play out. Their movements have to play out. If for some reason something changes from when they traced it, say the enemy could actually see their movements happening, doesn't happen very often, the enemy can then predict where they're going to be and use that against them. But like I said, with how fast they are, this is very, very uncommon. The third thing to do with the projection sorcery technique and tracing their movements over 1 second is upon initial startup, when Naoya and Naobito are starting from zero, just standing still and initiate their technique, they have to take time to accelerate. But, that's just, once again, the laws of physics. You can't go from 0 to 160 in an instant. It just doesn't work like that. You have to accelerate from 0 to 160. So initially starting the technique is not the technique at its 100%. To get the technique to its 100% efficiency and maximum speed, you have to continually keep it activated over time. So you activate it, move as fast as you can over that 1 second, build up as much acceleration, Then for the next second, you keep it active and you're already moving at, say, 78 miles an hour. Through that second, you go from 78 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour. Keep it going the next second and the next second, and you eventually reach your maximum speed. You can't go from 0 to maximum speed just right out of the gate. You have to build up that acceleration to your maximum speed. Not a big debilitating thing, because, well, that's something everybody has to do. Besides, I guess, Gojo. He kind of has a teleportation ability, sort of, warping something. I don't know. Anyway, most people have to accelerate from a dead stop. They don't just get to instantly hit their max speed. So this isn't really much of a drawback. And the fourth thing doesn't have to do with any drawback to Naoya or Naobito, but to their opponents. If they touch an opponent with their open palm and activate the technique, their opponent also has to abide by this 24 frame per second rule, otherwise they will be frozen. So this, I think, is one of the more complicated parts of it, because how do you mimic moving at 24 frames per second? It seems, conceptually, it feels like something that they would activate their technique and it would kind of be an automatic process of they automatically carry out those movements. But their opponent has to just physically do this with their physical speed and brain power and whatever else. So the only time we have ever seen this happen is in one of the most recent chapters, when Maki was fighting Naoya. In that fight, Maki, after being slapped by Naoya's palm for the last time before she, well, you know, she's seen it, she was able to, just by her physical speed alone, move at the same speed and abide by the same rules, like not breaking the laws of physics, all this other stuff, as somebody who traced 24 movements over 1 second. She was just that fast, moved in that insane way that almost looks like you're skipping movements. It's an absolutely insane thing to imagine somebody doing, and I think this is one of the reasons it's kind of hard to wrap your head around some of this stuff, is because when you think of the fact that Maki did that just with physical ability, it's hard to wrap your head around doing that. It's a very, very strange concept, not that it's particularly complicated. It's just odd. And to make this hopefully a little bit simpler, I have a diagram to kind of go over different scenarios of what you can, can't, or maybe can do. So on the first one for this diagram up in the top left, it's a very simple thing. We see Naoya constantly doing this in chapter 151. He moves in these circular patterns because it allows him to keep this acceleration and the speed up without breaking the laws of physics by trying to change direction too quickly. So the top left, easy, perfect, buttery smooth, keep it going. The top right, however, is when you start running into problems. When you start changing directions so often, so drastically and so quickly, laws of physics don't really allow things to do that when they have as much mass and speed as a human body moving at whatever speed Naoya is moving at. That wouldn't work. You can't do that. Once you have that much mass and speed, it can't instantly change direction without having very gruesome consequences. Moving on to the bottom left, we have the 2 red dots in there and that slight change in direction. This seems very plausible for Naoya or Naobito to do because it's not even a 90-degree change in direction. The red dots I am simulating as enemies. Naoya could move to the left of the first one, slap him on one shoulder, then slightly change direction to slap the other one on the other shoulder, and then circle back around to come straight on and knock through both of them while they're frozen in the pane of glass, or whatever that is. Seems pretty plausible. It's not a huge change of direction until we get to the full circular curve that we've seen is very possible. Now for the bottom right, these 4 little blue dots are just pillars. So my question for this is, we've seen Naobito do something similar to this when he was fighting against Jogo during the Shibuya incident. However, he only jumped to 1 pillar and then back to the ground. The reason I have a question mark is I don't know if you could fulfill this entire sequence. I assume having a piece of material like a pillar or a wall to help you change direction is very useful because, well, that's easier than just stopping on flat ground and immediately running the other direction. You have something to assist the stop and then push off of. So I want to say you could probably do the diagram in the bottom right as a projection sorcerer. However, I feel like this would probably be slightly higher level, but I don't know. This is stuff that, well, we're not going to get questions to everything, so it's nice to have a little bit of discussion in here. So, now that we have all that out of the way, I hope I did a pretty good job of kind of explaining what's going on. It really, in the most simple way, is you look, you go, I'm going to make these 24 movements, and then you start a timer, and within 1 second, you do all of those movements, as long as you don't excessively break the laws of physics. Outside of that, not really a whole lot to it. So, I hope I did a good job of explaining it. I hope I made it a little bit easier to digest over this video that is a little bit longer than I hoped it would be, but hey, here we go. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm out, and I'll see you next time.